Thank you, and hello everybody. It's great to be here with you. This workshop brings together three of my favorite things in San Francisco: our city administrator, our city controller, and small business. Our city administrator, Carmen Chu, really has been an MVP for a long time in San Francisco, but particularly through the pandemic and the city's response, and in her role in coordinating the Economic Recovery Task Force. I learned a lot working with Carmen, and I think I'm excited to see that now in the city administrator's office, she is taking some of the ideas that we developed through that task force and the emphasis on building back better, making San Francisco an easier place for small business to operate and thrive, and opening the door for small business to do more work for the city. Something she took to heart and is now implementing in her new role. Ben Rosenfield is another who was our city controller and who is, I believe, the sponsors of this particular workshop. Keeps City Hall running in all sorts of ways. But I think this portal that you're going to be discussing today is a really exciting innovation to make it easier for the smaller actors to learn about bidding opportunities and actually get in and do some of the work for the city. Small businesses are the lifeblood of our community, and we ask a lot of small business in San Francisco. We impose a whole lot of burdens that don't exist in other places. There are, of course, challenges here, and I think it is only right and fitting that we make particular effort to make some of the opportunities of work with the city available to our small businesses. So excited for this workshop, excited for the summit, and I hope you're all enjoying it, getting a lot out of it. And of course, it's just an honor and a privilege to be here to send you off into this workshop over the next bit of time that you're spending. So have a good afternoon, everybody, and have a great summit.
Thank you so much, Supervisor Mandelman. And with that, I'm pleased to reintroduce our representative from the Controller's Office to present his second session of today on the San Francisco City Partner website. So let's welcome back to the virtual stage, Kevane Wong of the Controller's Office. Welcome back, Kevane.
Thanks very much. Let's go ahead and move to the next slide. So as Nicole mentioned, my name is Kevane Wong. I'm with the Controller's Office, the Systems Division. Our group, the group I'm with, basically focuses on strategic sourcing, so sourcing events and the like, as well as the suppliers bidders experience. So a couple items. And so this particular session, we're focusing on the sourcing process and really from the bidders and suppliers perspective, right? So let's go to the next slide. All right, so I want to point out as we go along, there will be information that you can get to help walk back through this. I know I might go through quickly, so it might be difficult if you don't have something to go back to. In addition to PDFs of the slides we're going to go through becoming available, and Nicole and her team are going to manage that, there are also job aids that you can get that can help walk you through the process, right? So if you go to the SF City Partner website, that's our main site for bidders and suppliers and also general public to interact with our system. I always find it by going into Google and then searching for SF space City space Partner, and it's the top choice that will come up. If you go to that site, click the Help pull-down menu and then click on Training. It'll bring you to the page here on the right for training and resources. And if you have a bidder account, you can click on the button on the left, if you're a supplier on the right, and it will bring you to a bunch of different job aids for everything you might do as a bidder or supplier, including viewing and bidding on city business. So there are resources there, as well as the slides from this event that are going to be made available. All right, let's go ahead and move forward to the next slide, please. So this is basically what we'll be covering here. So there are a number of pieces, and they all sort of stitch together, right? So we're going to cover how to search for public events, how to search for private events, and I'll explain the difference between them. a definition, what are bid advertisements versus sourcing events? It sort of matters, and I'll explain what that is. We'll go through how to enter in a bid, and sort of a simple example. And then I also wanted to cover things like, hey, how do you find events that you've already bid on? That's actually confuses people sometimes. I want to be able to cover that. And then, of course, present contact information, how you can get help, etc. So let's go ahead and move on to searching for public events. And so I wanted to first explain, okay, what are public events versus private events, right? I have these two sections. What's the difference? So public events are basically an event that's posted by the city. It's on the SF City Partners website for anyone to view, including the general public. If you go to the SF City Partner website, you click on View Opportunities, you'll see all the different public events that are listed there. And like as I mentioned, basically anyone can go look at it. You don't have to be logged in to see sort of basic information. You could be in the general public, search for an event, click on it. You can see some basic details on a public event. To enter in a bid, though, you must be a bidder or supplier. But if you're a bidder or supplier in a public event, you can go ahead and click through, log in, click through, and enter a bid. So that's a public event. There's also private events. And so a private event is one where a pre-selected or pre-qualified group of bidders and suppliers has been asked to view and bid on the opportunity, right? So it's not open for everyone to see. It's basically, hey, here's the people that are invited. So you have to be a bidder or supplier that's invited to be able to view on it. You have to be able to be invited bidder or supplier to bid on it. They're posted in a different area on the SF City Partner website that you have to be logged in to see. And so I will cover where that is as well. So that's a bit of an idea of what the two are. Just to make things a little more tricky, you can have public events where you've invited particular bidders. And so they sort of sit in between where, hey, if you weren't invited, you can still access it and bid on it as you would any public event. But if you were invited, you have to go into the special area where you would find your private events. But most of the time, it's either one or the other. So let's go ahead and move to the next slide. So I have two pages that are sort of similar, and this goes to how do you find public events, right? The first one is you're not logged into our system, you're a general public. You can go to the page here on the left, simply go to the SF City Partner website. I actually put the URL here on this page as well. And you can click on either the View Opportunities link at the top of the page or on the Get Started button there in the middle of the page. And it will bring you to the page on the right, which is our View Opportunities page, right? This is where you can see all the public events. Let's go to the next slide. The next slide is very similar, but basically, if you are a bidder or a supplier and you've already logged into our system, you can still click View Opportunities to see it. You can still click the Get Started button, or you can also, under My Activity, click the View Opportunities link, and all three of those will bring you to the public events listing. All right, so next slide. So you've gone to this page, and now there's all these different events, and you want to sort of narrow down which ones you're looking at, right? Because it can be fairly broad. So there's a number of ways you can narrow down your search. One is by department. So let's say you always work with the Department of Public Works, you have a long history, and that's where the only kind of things you do for the city would be done, just as an example. If that were the case, you could go here, click on that department's pull-down menu, choose Department of Public Works. I think they're listed as just Public Works, and then click search, and you would see all the events listed for that department, right? Same thing with any other thing, DPH, Park and Rec, etc. So that's one way you can sort of narrow your search. Let's go to the next slide. Another thing you can do is you can click this advanced search criteria button. And what that's going to do is open up this section so you can see on the right where it shows a start date, end date, from, through, all these kind of fields. And so you can then use these to try to help, again, screen out what you're looking at. So if we go to the next slide, one of the things you might do is if you're a kind of person that goes to this SF City Partner website every 2 weeks, for example, and you just want to look every 2 weeks to see what opportunities are out there to bid on, what you might do is say, hey, I want to go look at the start date, from, and through, and I'm just going to tell it, hey, show me all the events that had started starting from 2 weeks ago through today. And you could fill in those dates, click search, And then it would just show you everything that started just in that last 2 weeks. And so you could do this every 2 weeks. It'd be fairly consistent, and you would see all the different events as they came up. So it's one way to sort of narrow your search. Another way, if we go to the next slide, is you might say, I just want to see events that are going to end soon. So let's go to the next slide. So if that were the case, you would say, I'm going to adjust these end dates here, the from and through dates for when they're ending. So you could say, I want to see the events that are going to start that end today or end any time in the next 2 weeks. You would say from today's date through 2 weeks from now and click search. And it would show you all the events that are going to close in the next couple of weeks. Now, I will point out, by default, we always have the end date from field showing today's date. So we're showing you only events that are set to expire from today going forward. If you needed to look at, I want to look at events that actually closed a week ago, you could then say, I can change these end dates from, and I'd have a week ago's date, whatever, was that, September 28th, whatever it is, through October 4th, click search, and then you could see a listing of the events that actually closed in the past week. So you can sort of use this to sort of help look at information. Not as helpful if it's in the past, obviously, but I just wanted to sort of point out there is a way to sort of look at these events if that is of value to you. So let's click to the next slide. So that's how to find public events. So now I want to look at, hey, how do you find private events, right? So you've been invited to an event. How do I find it? And it's in a different place, and that really throws people quite often. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So if you have a private event, you'll get an email generally if you're being invited to it. You can go here and you say, okay, I'm going to find it. I'm going to go to the SF City Partner website, log in, and then on the picture on the left, you'll see under My Opportunities a View Activity link. So if you click that, that's number one. It'll then take you to the page here on the right. And what you'll need to do on this event activity page is click on the Events Invited To link. I've got that surrounded by red, that's number 2. And what the system will then do, down to number 3 there, is it will list all the events that you've been invited to, right? So you'll see the ones you've been invited to. You can then just click into them and follow through with doing sort of your normal bid process, which we will touch on momentarily. So that's how you find it if you've been invited. It's a private event. So let's go ahead and move forward. So I want to pause here and do a bit of an explanation, because there are certain types of events you'll have here and they're treated a little bit differently. So let's go to the next slide. So you'll hear us talk about bid advertisements versus sourcing events. And I'll also say requests for information. I sort of lump into the concept of sourcing events. So what are these two different things? So a bid advertisement is basically that. It's an advertisement. It will be listed on here on the SF City Partner website. And it's basically a way for us to say, hey, there's a sourcing event that you might be interested in. Here's some information, but you need to go somewhere else to bid on it. So if you look at it, you'll find directions in there saying, okay, please send emails with these files to this person over here, or go to this other website. So why would we have this, right? Why would we have something where we're telling you about something and then sending you somewhere else? There's a couple examples that come to mind. One is that there are certain city departments that have their own sourcing system, right? Some of these large departments do. There's also situations like, I believe DPW, the Public Works Department, has some events where you can go and bid on it, but they need to have you sort of identified before they can give you files, right? And so they have a situation where they're going to send you to their system, have you log in first, or set up a login and then log in so you can download those files. So there's certain reasons a city department might say, you know what, I'm going to advertise here on SF City Partner, but then I want to take you somewhere else to have you actually bid. So that's one reason why. A second might be there's a city department, let's say the airport, has $1 billion contract for the runway renewal with one particular supplier, right? That's the prime contractor. And that prime contractor is going to have all these pieces of this contract that need to be done. They're called trade packages. And they may need to basically advertise that, hey, I need suppliers, subcontractors to come in and help me with this trade package. So what a city department may do is they can basically create this bid advertisement. So we're advertising the supplier's trade package on the SF City Partner website, right? So it's a way to basically help them extend their reach, make sure potential subcontractors will know about this, know there's a trade package that the supplier who already has a contract with the city is looking to fill. And so then you'll get information, might say, hey, this is what I'm looking for. Please send these files to this particular prime contractor. And then they'll be able to pick the people that will be doing this trade package for them on this contract. So that's sort of a second thing that you might see. So there's really only a few. There's sort of other things I know of. It's pretty rare, but there's a few reasons you might see that. I will point out, and we'll review that again on the next slide, is that all bid advertisements, when you're looking at them on the SF City Partner website, the name of the event will start with EXT, and that stands for external. It'll be followed by like a space and then a 3-letter department code, could be multiple department codes, and then what we call a pipe, and then this whole information on the rest of the line saying, hey, this is what this event's for. Bid advertisements start with EXT. And there's things we have programmed around that look for that and then sort of will alter what you can do on that event. And we'll cover that in the next slide. A sourcing event on the other side here of the slide, on the right side. A sourcing event and request for information are a way for the city to say, hey, we have this bid opportunity. We want people to bid on it inside the SF City Partner website, right? So they're listed there. If you want to bid on it, you need to log in as your bidder or supplier's under your bidder or supplier login, whichever one you happen to have, and put in your bid there. These events will start with a 3-letter department code. They will not have EXT, so they might have whatever it is, like CON for the controller's office, and then the rest of the event name. So those are sourcing events. You are expected to put stuff into the system. And let's go to the next slide, and I can explain that a little bit more. So I've got sort of a side-by-side here of a bid advertisement on the left side of the page, a sourcing event on the right side of the page. I sort of grabbed ones at random. And I just want to be able to do side-by-side so you can sort of see these differences. So you'll notice on the bid advertisement on the left, in the name of the event, you'll see EXT. I've got that boxed in red. And because there is that EXT there, our SF City Partners website has some coding that will basically say, aha, this is a bid advertisement. So you will notice there is no button for accept invitation on the left. So you'll see one on the right for the sourcing event, right? There's no need for you to click to say, hey, I want to follow this event in our system because everything for this event is going to happen somewhere else. So we've taken that button away. Place bid, if you click that place bid button on the left for a bid advertisement, it's not going to take you into the system. All it's going to do is have that blue box that's sort of at the top of that listing there come up and say, hey, this is a bid advertisement. Please read the details section of this to find out where you need to place your bid, right? So having EXT at the beginning is a clue that it's a bid advertisement. And it's also, you will not be able to click into this event in our system to put in a bid because we've taken things away, because the whole idea of this is it's advertisement and we need you to go somewhere else to actually place in the bid. On the right, sourcing events, you'll notice there is an accept invitation button. And when we get to a little further in here, I'll sort of walk through some of the value of that button. But it's a way for you to basically click on it and tell our system, hey, I'm interested in this event, and you'll be kept up on information. If there's a new version of this event that's created, if it's set up properly, you'll get a email saying, hey, this thing got updated. So you'll sort of be kept in the loop. And if you click the place bid button on the sourcing event, it'll take you further into the system in order to actually place your bid. So sort of a side-by-side to help explain some of the difference in how it'll look a little bit different. All right, so let's go ahead and move forward. So we touched on how do you find a public event? How do you find a private event? And what's sort of this difference between bid advertisements and sourcing events? So let's go ahead into the next part of entering in a bid, right? So this would be for a sourcing event. So you've gone to the SF City Partner website, you've found something that looks interesting, you've clicked into it, and you'll end up on a page that looks like this, of course, without all the red text everywhere. But this is my opportunity to sort of say, hey, this is what the page you'll land on, and here's some of the details that matter. So at the top of the page, you'll see that OCA, RFP, blah, blah, blah. So that's the event in question. And right below that, might be hard to read with the sizing here, but right below that are a couple of dates. There's a due by date and a start date. So when you can start putting in your bids, and due by is the last time that you can put in a bid. So those are sort of key begin and end dates that you need to know. On the left side, you'll see what we call the header level attachments. That See Attachments link has, when you click on it, you'll again be brought to a page with all these different documents that have been uploaded. Now, these are called header level. There's sort of two levels of this thing. There's header level, which are information and details that apply to this whole event. And then there's line items. Line items are, hey, what are we purchasing? There sometimes will be particular information and attachments that relate to just those lines. So this one right here we're looking at is for the overall event. On the right, you'll see details. This is where you'll see general information on this whole event, right? So what are we trying to purchase? What does this relate to? Is there a process? Is there a bidding event that needs to be held that you can go to, right? So all that information is in details. We've touched on place bid and accept invitation, those buttons. Below that are a find partner and view partner request button. And these are basically there to help you if you want to partner up with someone to bid on this event, right? So if this is $1 billion massive contract, chances are you're not going to be doing this alone. You're probably going to be partnering with people to try to do this event. So if you need to find people to bid with, what you can do is click on Find Partner. It'll bring you to a web page, right, with a little online form that you can fill in saying, this is information on me. I need to find a prime contractor I want to work with, or I want to find a subcontractor. Here's the information that the information that I have for who I need to work with, right? I need to find someone that can do concrete work or whatever it might be. When you click submit on that form, if you don't have a pop-up blocker, if you have, you might need to hold control and then click submit. But what it'll do is create an email on your system that you should be able to see with the information you've entered, and it will be addressed to the sourcing event administrator and copied to Michael West and myself on the Strategic Sourcing Inspires team. And you'll need to send that, and then we'll basically do a processing. We'll add your request as an attachment to this overall document. So up on that See Attachments area, so that anyone else looking at this event can see that you are advertising that you want to find a partner. There's also a view partner request. The idea there is, hey, I don't necessarily want to post that I'm looking for someone. I just want to first see who else is looking. So there's work we're doing on here right now. It has an issue. What will eventually will happen is you can click view partner requests, and then you'll simply see all the partner requests that have come up on here that have been listed. At this time, though, if you need to find who's listed, you'll need to go to the See Attachments to see what's been attached there in terms of partner requests, or contact the sourcing event administrator to say, hey, I want to see who's submitted a partner request. And speaking of that, just below that, you'll see contact information and a person's name and an address. That is the sourcing event administrator for this event, right? So if you have questions on this event, the person that's listed there and their email and sometimes their phone number, that's who you need to reach out to, right? So those are the main things at the top of this page. At the very bottom, you'll see line items. Basically, this is a listing of what are we buying in this event, right? For this particular one, there's only one line that's listed. Looks like for guard, unarmed, Wednesday, looks like 12 hours, blah, 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 right? So what is the city purchasing? That's the line item. All right. So let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. That's what you'd find there. What we recommend is that if you are interested and you want to follow this event, we recommend that you click the accept invitation button. Two positives on there. One is, as I mentioned earlier, it lets the system know you're interested in this event, and it allows the system to send you updates if the event has changed, right? So it's a keep me in the loop. Also, if you click that invitation, it gives the sourcing event administrator some ability to take certain steps to help you if there's system issues, right? You were trying to enter your bid in, for some reason you couldn't get it in. If that happens, you should contact them to let them know, hey, I'm having issues. You should contact the user support desk to see if you can get help, but also to have a record that you are trying to enter an event your information on your event before the bid date closed, right? So that's important to sort of have that documentation. So those are important, but it also just gives the sourcing event administrator a little leeway to help you there. So it's an important thing to click. I will point out there is one downside if you click it. Unfortunately, our system takes you back to the view opportunities page, the general one. So you need to find your event again and click back into it. But I think this is one of those things where the benefits outweigh the negative. So I would just make sure you look at the event number, write that down before you click check invitation so you can find it again. Let's go to the next page. And then, of course, if you're ready to place a bid, you'll click the place bid button. So let's move forward and sort of walk through that process. So if you click place bid, first thing you'll see is that pop-up window on the left. And it's basically saying, hey, do you want me, Mr. System, to fill in the bid quantity for you for each line item, right? You can click yes if you're planning on matching the bid quantity that's requested. You can say no if you want to do it manually. Once you click through that, you'll end up on the page on the right. This looks very similar to what you just saw, but it's a little bit different. And this is going to be the page where you're actually entering in your bid, right? So this is the top part of that page. Again, you'll see comments and attachments. Very important. You'll look through there because sometimes there are attachments that you need to download, fill in information for, and then upload back into the system. And that's where you'd find it. Next slide, please. The next part is what you'll find are what we call the bid factors questions. Some events have them, some events don't. But this is basically where the city will ask you a bunch of information that's not just price, right? So if we want to find out how many years of experience do you have doing this work? Are you a local business enterprise? What are the dates you'd be able to do this event in? Whatever it might be. This is where these kind of questions will be posed, right? So you'll see a series of questions if they have them in there. They don't always have to have them, but in a case, if they do, this is where you'll see them, bunch of questions. Make sure you fill them out. There could be files that need to be uploaded. You'll see like a little attachment thing to do that. So bid factor questions need to be responded to. Go to the next slide, please. And at the bottom part of the page, you'll see again your line items. So remember we saw those, except here's where you're going to enter in information on what your bid is for that. So for this one line event, we just have this line one. You'll see there the unit bid price that needs to be clicked on, or I'm sorry, the price entered in on. If you enter it in there, just below that, you'll see your total line pricing, right? So if it's 5 items and you enter in $10 for your bid price, below will show $50, right? To sort of help you reaffirm, okay, am I doing how much is my total bid for? You might remember before I mentioned there's sort of a header level detail and then there's line item details. So this is a header area. We're basically saying, hey, for this particular line, this is just the basic header information. If there's more detailed information on this line, you would click that bid button and it would then bring you to this page on the right. And this is the line item page, right? You're going to have information, a little more information here for just this line item. That comments and attachments area will show comments and attachments just for this line item, right? So there may be additional attachments here. This is an attachments area that the general public cannot see because you have to be logged in to get this deep in the system. So certain sourcing events where there's political or sensitive documents, for example, they might be buried into here because they only want it to be available to someone that's actually a bidder or a supplier that's making a bid. You'll see again that unit bid price, right? Just you could enter it here instead of on the other page where we just were. And then when you're finished with this line item level, you will click that return button. That brings you back to the page here on the left. And when it's all set, you click that submit bid button. So let's go to the next slide. So after you've clicked the submit bid button, if everything's great, you'll then come to this bid confirmation page that basically confirms that you've done your bid. I think we've actually even added a button in here where you can say, hey, give me a printout of my of the bid I just entered in. I believe that's in there at this point. So, but regardless, you'll come to this bid confirmation page. This confirms that you've had this, you've entered in your bid, and then you can click event list to go back to the main page. So let's go to the next slide. So that's basically the process for entering in a bid. They can be much longer depending on the event, right? Some might be really long, have a lot of questions, have a lot of line items. But that's basically the basic process. One thing I wanted to cover though is, okay, let's say you've entered in your bid, and now you're saying, you know what, I want to adjust my bid. I want to edit it. I want to add a new bid, things that might happen. And depending on how that event was set up, you may be able to do either one, right? You may be able to put in an additional new bid or edit your bid, but you need to go to a different place to do that. And so I wanted to show where you can find your bid once you've already put a bid in. Well, let's go to the next slide. So after you've logged into the system, this is a bidder's view. You'll need to then go down to the My Opportunities section and click on View Activity, right? So that's where you want to click through if you want to find an event you've already bid on. Let's go to the next slide. And then on the Event Activity page, click on the Events Bid On link. So what that's going to do is then list below all the events that you've already bid on. And so if you want to then say, okay, I see the event, I want to adjust it, I want to edit it, let's say. What you need to do is click the greater than sign at the far right. And that's the only place you can click. If you click anywhere else on that whole line item there, or the whole event that you've clicked on before, if you click anywhere else, you'll end up in a different part of the system and you won't be able to adjust your bid. You have to just click that greater than sign. So that's sort of confusing. So I wanted to point that out. Once you click that, we'll go to the next slide. The system will then change your view a little bit, and it will show this line, that blue line and down, that will be shown there, which wasn't before. And you can then click that View Details button, and that will bring you to a page where you can say, great, now there's things here where I can say, hey, I want to adjust my bid, or I want to enter a new bid, etc. So that's really more common if people just want to adjust it, and that's where you'd go to adjust it. So I just want to show access how to find that. So let's go to the next page. So, and we're actually at the contact information. So one more click. So let's say you're having some issues, right? You're going in, there's technical details or technical issues, or you're just confused, I don't know where to go. How can you get help? So on the SF City Partner website page, you go to the Help pull-down menu at the top of the page, and then click Contact. You'll see this page, which provides several ways to get help. At the top is an area where you can say, hey, I want to create a user ticket, is what we call it. Basically, hey, fill in a form and send it to us to help you. If it is an urgent thing, like you're like at the last half hour or hour or even several hours of an event and you need help right now, go ahead and use the live help, right? Call user support. It's the numbers listed there, 415-944-2442. They're great. They really do their best to help you, and they're very knowledgeable. They're available every week, every business day from 8:30 to 5. So that's the way to get someone the quickest, right? To get quickest help. There's also an email that we have listed there, SF City Partner Support at sfgov.org. So you can file that. That creates a ticket. So that is there as well. And I also wanted to share, if you're on a page and it's hard to describe and you really need someone to sort of see where you're at, we do have this technology that will allow you to say, okay, I'm going to go to this help contact page. I'm talking with user support. I can then click that help me button. A 4-digit code will show below it then. And you can give it to the user support person who can log into a certain system. They can type in that code, and basically they can connect in with you so they can see the one web browser page you are on, right? So they can't see anything else on your screen that for security purposes, but they can see the one web browser page you're on with our system, so that you can show them, okay, here's where I'm at, what am I missing, right? So they can then point out, oh no, you need to click here, not there, etc. So there's a number of ways we can help. And I just want to make sure you know that is available for your use. So that's basically a quick run through. Like I said, there's a lot of different events, and some can be very complex, some little. This is sort of the basic framework. I just wanted to open this up then for any questions you might have.
Well, thanks so much, Kevin. We appreciate your second very informative presentation, and we'll jump over to the audience Q&A now. A reminder to our audience, you can send your questions into the email address that you see on this slide. cityadmin.events@sfgov.org. And we have several questions already in the queue, so I'm going to jump down and start on these questions first. So let's see. The first question, roughly what proportion of the bid opportunities on the SF City Partner website are bid advertisements versus sourcing events?
I've never looked at that. I would guess that the majority are actually bid advertisements that I've sort of noticed. That's just from eyeballing and just having to look at it at times. I know there are some that are like long-standing ones. So there are some departments that have their own sourcing system, as I mentioned, and I believe one or two of them, or maybe even a few, have bid advertisements that are sort of long-standing one, right? That's going to be there for years and basically saying, hey, here's a bunch of events we're going to have, please go to us. So there's some that sit there for a long time, whereas sourcing events are pretty much by their nature only going to be out there for so long, right? 1, 2, 3 months at most. So that probably is part of the reason you have more bid advertisements. And then there's also those situations where, hey, there's a prime contractor has a trade package and that's being advertised for them on the system. So that's probably another reason that there's more bid advertisements. Don't know offhand the proportion, but I think the majority are still bid advertisements versus sourcing events.
It's about 80%, Kevin.
I'm sorry, Michael?
It's about 80%.
80%? Okay.
Yeah, generally.
That's, by the way, Michael West, who runs the Strategic Sourcing and Suppliers Group.
Wonderful. Hey, Michael, and thanks so much. Great. I'm going to pull over to this next question here. So this is from an audience member who says, if I am interested in bidding on a sourcing event where I would bid through the website, is this the only option for how to submit my bid? Does the city still accept hard copy proposals ever?
No, it should be through our website. Now, I won't say never, right? Because you could have situations for some reason, and this would be more exceptions, right? Where something might be accepted as a hard copy, right? So an event was down for some reason. I can't think of, there's some sort of problem is really more the reason why you'd have something that would be accepted outside of the system. But there really is a strong push to say, you know what, this needs to be in the system. It's an equal footing for everyone. It's sort of the same hurdles, et cetera, to do it, the same process. It's a lot more efficient. There's cost-related things, et cetera. So it's certainly not going to be a either or as a general rule. It would simply be, hey, if there's some extenuating circumstance that would cause the city to say, okay, we're going to allow a hand-delivered person instead. Bid advertisement, you could have some of those that are really by their nature, they're saying, hey, go somewhere else to actually put in your bid. So by those nature, those could have situations where something is a paper form, email, however you want to do it. But in terms of the sourcing events, if it's a sourcing event, it's really you need to log in to put it into our system.
Got it. Thank you. All right. Our next question from an attendee is a two-part question. So their first question is, when reviewing past events for the results, can you only view those that you have submitted a bid on, or is there historical information available about the outcomes of events that you did not submit a bid for? And then the second part of their question is, when you view details for the event that you already bid on, what types of details are actually shared? Can you see the winning bidder if it's not yours?
So that goes to the department's process. So we manage the system that this is all run on. And so if you look at the SS City Partner website, there is some limited information you can see on events that have already closed, right? So if you did, I remember I sort of talked about, hey, you can look at, I want to look at the end date, and you can look at the past dates and sort of find events that way, or even blank those out. And if you know the actual event number, search by event number. So you can find some basic information, and there is, I believe on there, it'll say if this thing is in process of being awarded, if it is awarded. It's only going to give you so much information. Past that, it's really a decision of the department of how much detail they're giving out, right? If you were in that process of bidding and they award it to someone else, I think there's usually a notification that they do that tells everyone, okay, here's where our indications are, here's where our event's going to be notified. And what how much detail is in there is really sort of up to them and their processes. So I wouldn't know a lot of that detail. That's going to be a department sort of business process. I would say that you would probably need to contact them for information on it, and you could ask them about it. I believe if you look up the event that's closed, you can. I think that's some of the things you can find is who is a sourcing event administrator. So at least you can find out who to reach out to.
Perfect. That's super helpful. And then this next one, Kaveen, I think you mentioned this on your last slide, but the question is, can I go back in to adjust my bid if I've already submitted it, but the deadline has not passed?
Yes, if the deadline has not passed, generally speaking, yes. Now, the reason I qualify it is depending how the city has set it up, there's a bunch of things they can mark on it. They can mark events to say, okay, I want people to be able to put in additional bids and I want people to be able to edit their bids. They could basically mark it instead to say, okay, I want people to put in additional bids, but not allow them to edit. Or they could say, I want people to allow people to edit their bid, but only one bid. They can't put in additional ones. So there's toggles, and it depends how they've set it up. The presets, the way we have it set presets, and I think how most people go forward is it allows you to do additional bids and allows you to edit it. And so as long as that bid date, the end date has not passed, generally speaking, you can go in the process we sort of showed of how to get to those events and edit your bid. So the qualifiers, it depends how the department has set it up, but generally speaking, that is the case that you can edit your bid as long as it hasn't closed.
Perfect. Here's another question. Can you explain more about how the find partner process works? Can I look at qualifications of the potential partners that are listed there?
So the post, what is posted is basically provided by the supplier, whoever's listing that they want to find a partner. So they're in the form, there's sort of a standard sort of form, right? So there's, hey, what's the name of the company? What is the contact person? What's the contact phone number? Are you looking for a prime or a subcontractor? And what are the qualifications you're looking for? That's basically self-reported as far as that main paragraph. And so it's sort of up to you past that to say, okay, I want more detail, right? So I think it's more of this piques my interest. I want to then reach out to that person directly on the contact information they've given and say, hey, I need more information. So the advertisement self-reported, I think it means that then that you need to then go further if you want to qualify. Is this actually as good as I think it is? Is it better? Whatever. It's up to you then to do that kind of qualification of them.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. Next question here is from James. It's the old SF City bid site used to allow searches for bids with an LBE partner requirement. Is there any kind of substitute for that feature on the new site to avoid the time to look through all these opportunities?
Yeah, I don't know of a good way to do that with the current system. There are a number of changes or adjustments we'd like to do this. We kind of have a big list of improvements that we have on our list. So it's a good idea. It'd be nice if we have a good way to do that. But there is not at this time a way to search by, is there an LBE component?
Okay, got it. And then we have another question here from Ali. So you explained that there are public and private events that are listed on the SF City Partner website. Can you reiterate for the audience when each of those would be used?
Sure. So a public event is it's basically something where they're saying, hey, we're opening this up to everyone, right? Let's say the city needs to buy just a bunch of staples, right? It's a pretty commoditized product. And it's really probably then just a matter of pricing. And so that's certainly something you'd say, I want to just open up to everyone. Let me swing to the other end of the spectrum. When would you want a private event? Let's say there's something highly complex. There's only so many people that can provide this kind of service. And you want to limit sort of, you've already pre-qualified who would be out there. So, and how the city might do that is it would issue a request for information, an RFI, as a public event. They gather all the different people that have applied to that one. They've narrowed it down to, okay, here's the top 5 in there that sort of meet the qualifications we need. And then they might then take that RFI, copy from it to create a private sourcing event where they're only inviting those 5 people, right? So that's the classic example of they've pre-qualified on a very complex thing. and they're only going to want to take those bids from those 5 people they've pre-qualified, right? So that's sort of an extreme example on the other way. I'm sure there's going to be things where it's plenty of stuff in between. Doesn't have to be a commodity thing. Let's say it's, I don't know, road building services can probably be actually fairly complex. That might be something they still do as a public event, right? Where it's just simply saying, you know what, we want to collect as many bids as we can, and we're just opening this up as a public event from the get-go. Private events is probably going to be more either pre-qualified events is where you'll probably see that most often.
Perfect. All right, I think that looks like just about it in terms of the questions. I have one from Grace here asking for the link to the SF City Partner website. So Grace, don't worry about it. We'll definitely share this presentation afterwards, so you'll be able to grab that. And then also a couple of comments coming in that some of the slides were a little bit blurry. And so same response for those users that have no fear. You'll make sure to have this presentation in your inboxes right after we finish the summit. So
yep. And
you'll
I
be
will
able
say,
to look back.
the way I always remember to get to the SF City Partner website, because I don't even have it memorized, is I basically just go to Google and I Google up SF space city space partner, and it is it's always been the top listing that whenever I've done it. So that should be the other quick way to find it.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Kevin, for the tip, and thanks for the Q&A and your presentation. We really appreciate your time to join us today for the past 2 sessions.